All right, so it is currently 2:05 Central Time. So it's a good time to get started. I think we have about a few minutes for as many folks to jump on, and if anybody else will comes on later, um, this session is being recorded, so everyone can get the opportunity to see the whole thing in its entirety. Um, so without further ado, let's get started. So introduce myself. My name is Abdullah Shauki. I am one of the regional U.S. programs coordinators for Islamic Relief USA. And I want to just take a quick moment to thank you all for joining us today, for being on this webinar. We want to say thank you to each and every one of you that's out there, that's working hard in your communities to try and respond to this unprecedented situation, this unprecedented time that we find ourselves in. I know time and time again we hear these words that this is, unprecedented. This is the new normal. This is, one for the history books. Yada yada yada. But certainly it would be a much more difficult time had it not been for each and every one of you out there working in your communities, advocating for your communities, and doing what we can to support each other during these times. Um, and that is why we're all here today, and that's why we're trying to continue to support organizations like yourselves who are on the ground working in your local communities. If we can go to the next slide, we'll show today's agenda. Excellent. So quick thing with the agenda here. One, we're going to meet the team. By that, I'm just going to give a brief introduction to the team members for Islamic Relief's U.S. programs. We'll then do a quick recap of our phase one response, what we've kind of done, the number of partners that we worked with, and then from there, we'll jump into the meat of today's webinar, which is why you are all here, and that is our phase two funding in terms of eligibility, categories, what sort of documents you may need for the submission, budget, and what sort of timeline we're working with. And then lastly, we will close out with a Q&A session. Now, all of you are currently muted. And so if any one of you has a question at any point during the today's webinar, please utilize either the chat and go ahead and submit your question through the chat, or better yet, you can utilize the Q&A section or the Q&A button that you see there. You can ask your question there. We can respond directly to that question, or we can answer it during the webinar. There is a question already here that will the recording be made available online? That yes, we will share this recording with you all so that you can also go back and review it yourself, or you can share it with others. But again, if you have any questions, either utilize the chat or better yet, utilize the Q&A button so that we can answer your questions directly, or again, answer them on the webinar itself. Next slide, please, Wasif. All right, so quick introduction. This is your U.S. programs team. We have with us Brother Ghulam Kehar, Sister Marwa Latif, myself, Abdullah Shauki, Sister Dunya Abdullah, Brother Arif Jamil, Brother Abdullah Sayyid, Sister Susan Ahmed, and last but not least, Brother Wasif Qureshi. And the reason why I'm introducing everyone to you today, not necessarily to dive into each one's role or to confuse you, but more so to lessen the confusion, because some of you might be familiar with us, regional coordinators, but again, during this time, we're scrambling to work as fast as possible. So there may be times where you may hear from, if I'm your regional coordinator, or if you've worked with me in the past, you may hear from me directly, or you may hear from any one of these other team members. So we just wanted to give a quick introduction to who each one of us is, and kind of put the names out there so that you're familiar with them, so that if you receive any sort of messaging or anything like that from any one of us, you know that it is coming from the U.S. programs team. We're all in constant communication with one another internally, so that, again, if one of us needs to pick up the slack or something, um, we'll kind of jump on that. So again, just a quick introduction. You may see these names. Please don't get confused. Don't freak out. We're all on the same team here. And we just, again, want to introduce them to you. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to go really briefly over our response to COVID-19 and what IRUSA has been doing since the onset of this crisis. And so far, during this entire time, IRUSA has dedicated more than $4.7 million in COVID-19 emergency funding worldwide. Of that 4.7 million, we have about 2.8 million that has been committed directly here in the United States in the form of grants to partners like yourselves. We already had our phase 1 response, and during that time we supported nearly 100 organizations within the past 2 months, and of those partners, some sorry, my computer is glitching out here. Apologize. Of those partners, we've had some who have run community pantries, some who have done direct meal disbursements, some who have provided PPE disbursements. And so this picture that you're looking at here is actually one of our gift in kind recipients, where we worked in conjunction with an organization to purchase rice and distributed those bags of rice to the organizations. So again, that was one of our projects. And if we can go to the next slide. Excellent, thank you. So in this next slide, again, just a quick collage of some of the activities and programs that some of our partners have participated in. One of our partners, but some of our partners that we want to give a quick shout out to is Al Ma'un of Nevada, Support Life Foundation from California, Zaman International from Michigan. Some of our partners who have received rice distributions in the DMV area or Northern Virginia area. And these images that you see here are all from those different partnerships and those different distribution activities that have occurred, again, over the last 2 months during our phase 1 funding. Of that phase 1 funding, we had about 45 mosques receive funding for direct services to their communities. We also had 44 partners who received funding as well to provide, again, direct services and distributions to their local communities. And lastly, we wanted to highlight an amazing partnership that we were able to form with World Central Kitchen. That is an organization that was founded by Chef Jose Andres, who's a world famous chef, who founded World Central Kitchen to be able to provide meals in times of crisis. And we were able to partner with them, and we contributed $500,000 for their efforts in the response to the COVID-19 crisis. The really amazing thing about Jose Andres and his organization is the way that they operate, and it's not so much that they just do the meal distributions or provide hot meals to communities, but it's the way that they operate that we really loved and found very innovative, and that is they work in conjunction with local community restaurants So they actually purchase these meals from restaurants to distribute. And so this is kind of a two-pronged approach where, yes, they are providing meals to those in need in their communities, but they're also stimulating the local economy by, again, going to these, local mom and pop restaurants and purchasing meals from them directly, so that they're able to operate, they're able to kind of keep the lights on and to, pay their employees. So we thought it was a beautiful endeavor, and so that $500,000 again is to work with them, or to provide relief or meals in 33 states, with about 180 cities in the United States being served directly through this grant. So we just wanted to highlight again some of the phase one response and phase one projects that we've worked with local partners. But again, we know why you're all here, and that is for the phase two funding. And so with that, I will turn it over to Sister Dunya, who is my colleague in New Jersey, and she will be explaining to you everything in regards to the phase two funding for COVID-19 response. And then from there, we will then jump back into our Q&A section.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawi. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Like Shawi mentioned, my name is Donya. I am the Northeast Regional Programs Coordinator. I hope everyone's having a beautiful Monday, inshallah, and I'm going to jump right into it. So for our application, I just wanted to highlight some of the main takeaways that you'll see. But to start off, on the screen right now, you'll see our standard eligibility criteria for all of our grants. So this should be nothing new if you have received a grant from us previously in previous years. So you should be an IRS registered 501c3 public charity. You should be in good standing with your state, and that's something I'll touch on in a couple of slides. You should be registered and operational for at least 3 full calendar years, exclusively operating within the US. Your annual cash budget should be under $1 million. This is strongly desired, but it's not going to disqualify you. So if you have a question about your budget being 1.3 million, 1.4, please feel free to email us at usgrants@irusa.org, and we'll be able to walk you through that process, inshallah. And last but not least, our funding should not be used for anything religious. So proselytizing, if you are a masjid and you're trying to keep your weekend Quranic classes going, that's also, again, something our funding will not be able to go to. So next slide. Only 2 types of groups won't be eligible for this grant. So one being if you did not meet any of the criteria that I just mentioned, as well as if you received any of our COVID-19 phase 1 grants. So those were the ones that Shoei just mentioned. If you were a Ramadan food pantry partner, if you received our COVID-19 phase 1 food security grant, if you were a mosque that received funding from us, or you're part of the community response initiative right now. Those 4 categories are also not eligible to apply. But if you were a partner that received any rice or other in-kind distribution like hygiene kits or masks, you're good to go and apply for this grant. These are our 4 categories for this grant: food security, healthcare, including personal protective equipment, domestic violence, and financial assistance. We left these categories pretty broad intentionally because we want you to tell us what your community is in need of, and nobody knows that better than you. So with that being said, we should be able to get a good sense of what your project is about through reading your program description and budget. And if anything stands out, then we'll be able to reach back out to you for clarification and adjustment if need be. A possible question somebody might have, or a scenario, if you're looking into the domestic violence category and you have a couple of your clients who are interested in food or financial assistance, those should be under domestic violence and not financial assistance necessarily. I hope that makes sense. So if I'm a client, if I'm an organization and I'm looking to go apply for this domestic violence grant, my money should go towards my clients for food and financial assistance. So you wouldn't need to worry about applying for food security or financial assistance. And just to put it out there, only one applications will be reviewed per organization. Another quick note is that every grant for this funding will be 12 flat. So what that means is that all of your program description and budget should equal 12,000, nothing more and nothing less. I'll review that again in our budget, but just so you could keep that in mind, you have to plan to use the full 12,000 if you're going to go through with this grant. Okay, next slide, please. We wanted to mention a couple of the legal documents that we request from our applications. An IRS 501c3 determination letter is something that we always ask for, and it's something that all nonprofits usually have on hand. And I'll show an example of that in the next slide, but that's something that will require for you to upload. Something else, the certificate of good standing, or sometimes it's called certificate of existence or authorization, depending on which state you're in. That's something that we also require our organizations to upload because we want to make sure that you're in good standing with your state. An example of that is also to come, but you have to make sure that your certificate of good standing is dated within 8 months of today or whenever our applications launch. So since we're launching today, you should be able to, we should be able to see a date that's within the 8 months of today's date on that certificate. If you applied, but the date maybe is last May or last June, please feel free to apply again on your websites. I am pretty sure it's a very straightforward application online, and we'll accept a proof of application of good standing as a placeholder. And once the actual certificate gets mailed or emailed to you, then we'll replace that on your application. All right, so next slide, please. So this is an example of a standard 501c3 determination letter. We're looking for something that says that, yes, this organization is tax exempt. Pretty standard. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with this. Next slide. So here to the left is a standard looking certificate of good standing or existence or authorization from a state. So here, the state of Arizona, you'll find that your state's information should be up top. And what we're looking for specifically, where at the bottom, where that date is October, is that 2015? That's where we're looking for the date to be within 8 months. So something along those lines, and it's always a Google search away, your state and evidence of good standing, and it should be the first 1 or 2 links, and it should be able to walk you through that process pretty smoothly. And to the right, I just wanted to mention this document. This is something that pertains to messages usually, for what I know of, in New York or California, that you don't have to technically be registered as a nonprofit in your state, but since you are doing charitable work, you have to be registered with your charities bureau. And so we'll need you to send us proof of that. And so it'll look something like this. This is from the state of New York. It says notice of registration, and it'll tell us that you applied for active status under their charities bureau. So again, that only qualifies for some messages in certain states. Okay, next slide. All right, our organizational leadership screening. So this is a template. You won't necessarily see it in our application when you're applying for this time around, but it is something that we're requiring upon approval. So if you are approved, this is information that we'll need to collect from you regarding your senior management and board of directors. And the reason we do this, because, and we get a lot of questions about this, is IRUSA being a large organization, we need to be able to vet our applicants carefully and prioritize transparent grant agreement. And obviously, all of the information that is collected is handled and stored accurately, so no concerns on that part. But just so you're aware, if any of the information is incomplete, it will affect our ability to finalize your application. And again, this isn't something that you're going to be required to fill out on the application this time around, but if you are approved, we will reach back out and ask you to fill out this organization on behalf of all your senior management and board of directors. Okay, next slide, please. Awesome. So this is our budget template, or our screenshot of our budget template, and a couple of things I wanted to highlight on here. Again, this grant is fixed at $12,000. So no matter what category you're applying for, all of your program activities and costs for budget should equal to $12,000 at the bottom of where it says IRUSA contribution column. So that column all the way to the right, that is where everything under there needs to equal $12,000. So if you take a look to the column to the left of that, it says extended costs. So for example, if I'm an organization and I know that the whole of the program is going to cost $20,000, I'm going to break down all of those program budget costs in that column. And then since we could only give $12,000 out, that's where you'll need to break it down in the IRUSA contribution column. So I hope that makes sense. And something else you'll see is that our budget is broken down between like direct service and indirect service. So for example, if I'm interested in food security, anything pertaining to the food itself, like purchasing the food, that would be a direct service. Rather, an indirect service would be transportation of getting the food from one place to another, packaging, marketing, any of those supporting costs. The top portion where it says grant number, a lot of my organizations, you don't need to worry about that. Long story short, it's an internal field, so you don't have to answer any of that grant number portion of it. Just leave that to us and we'll get back to you on it. And another main highlight for the budget is that we have capped our administrative fee at 15%. And any exceptions or anything that we catch as a red flag, we'll reach back out to you and kind of go through it case by case. But again, anything administratively, like transportation, salary, budgeting, packaging, stuff like that, all the administrative stuff should be capped at 15%. So most of the budget goes to direct services. Okay, next question, next slide. All right, so this is a screenshot of what you'll see at the end of the application. There are 3 attestations. Each one is pretty straightforward. It's basically things that you'll need to agree upon before submitting your application, that your organization understands that it will need to submit a final report to IRUSA, that you understand your organization will submit media throughout the project's implementation, and that you are complying with social distancing guidelines wherever you are. So you will not be able to submit your application until all 3 of those are clicked. And again, reporting information will be communicated after the approval process. So we don't have much information to share with you on that, but that is something that we will require moving forward. Something also I want to mention, please make sure that you're saving, if you're not going to go through the application all in one shot, which should take about 45 to 60 minutes, please make sure that you're saving draft. There's a button at the bottom that says save draft. Make sure you are clicking that before walking away, just so your browser doesn't do anything funny. And then when you're ready to submit, just click submit. All right, final slide, please. And here's our timeline. So the launch of the application will go out today at 5 p.m., so a little less than 2 hours now, which means, again, that it'll go out same time, whether you're in Central or West Coast. And then it'll close next Tuesday, May 19th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, the same time wherever you are, whether that's West Coast or Central. It'll be 8:59 p.m. PST or 10:59 p.m. CST. So please take that into consideration. And our link to the application will be found on our grants website. So that's right over there, www.irusa.org/grants or grant applications. Each one works. And a couple of reminders. Again, the whole of the application should take around 45 to 60 minutes to complete. If you don't have an application via Submittable, you'll need to create one. It's our grant management system that we're working with currently, and it's a free account. So once you click on the URL in our website, it'll inform you that you either need to sign in or sign up, and from there you'll be able to walk through the form. Once an application is submitted, all communication should be through Submittable. So you'll see that a very cool function with Submittable is that there's a messaging portion. And so anything that you have a question about relating to the grant or budget, media, everything should be communicated on there just so everything's all in one place. And again, because you might be dealing with several of our teammates, we want to make sure that all of your information is saved in one place. And last but not least, we're always here to help. If you have any questions, please email us at usgrants@irusa.org. So we have now reached the Q&A section. I know some questions have come in.
All right.
So I see one right now. What is the timeline in which the prospective project must be completed by? So it will be launched today, and we're hoping to have decisions made by the beginning of June, maybe first 2 weeks of June. And so from June 15th to September 15th, a 3-month period is when all of the implementation should be taking place. Okay, any other questions? Will these slides be made available afterwards? Yes, they will. You'll find them on our grants website, again, www.rusa.org/grants.
Also, Dunya, I wanted to mention really quickly that for those of you who were asking about the link, we will be sending an email out very shortly, right after this webinar is over, which will include the link, the direct link to be able to go online to access the application. So for those of you who may have missed it, you don't have to, go back and search through the chat or search through the recording. That will be provided to you as well. Also saw a question here from Phyllis asking about the budget slide. Again, you can see that online, but do you have limits for each cost category? The total limit is $12,000. So yes, the total grant is $12,000. You must utilize all 12,000. It can no more, no less. As far as limits for cost categories, the only limit that we have set is for operational overhead, which is set at 15%.
Okay, so I see a couple of questions about the, again, $12,000 grant. So I know, Shawty, you explained it, like there's nothing more, nothing less to it. If we could go back to the budget slide real quick. So basically what we're looking for on that column that says IRUSA contribution, that's where the total amount of all of those program descriptions should equal to $12,000. So all the way at the end of the budget, you should see a $12,000 total for that column. But again, if your program is going over that and it's basically going to take maybe $20,000 or $30,000 to complete this project for you, then that would go in the extended cost, and you're just showing us where our $12,000 would be coming out of. I hope that makes a little more sense. Let's see. Again, how many months should grant cover, or is it up to our discretion? So the grant will be open between June 15th and close out September 15th. So you have a 90-day period to implement all of those project activities and disperse the $12,000 with it. Again, those who have received Ramadan or COVID-19 phase 1 funding will not be able to qualify for this grant. Are there PPE requirements by IRUSA? Not requirements, but we do expect that our organizations comply with CDC regulations for social distancing, just to keep everyone safe.
So there was a question also in the chat about if anyone who's already received COVID response funding be qualified to apply for this round. So just to reiterate, if you've already received some type of COVID response from IRUSA during our phase 1, whether it was again one of the mosque support grants, COVID grants, or Ramadan grants, then no, you would not be eligible to qualify or eligible to apply for the phase 2 funding. And just really quickly, there's a lot of questions coming in all at the same time, so just bear with us while we work to answer the questions that are coming in through the chat, as well as the questions in the Q&A section. So we're just working as fast as possible to answer those for you. There was also a question earlier about whether or not you could apply for multiple categories. And the answer is no. You choose one category to apply for. So whether that is food distributions, PPE, financial assistance, or domestic violence. You choose one of those, and then you would apply to receive the $12,000 grant.
Go ahead.
There's a question from Carol Hunter. May a portion of the funds be used for staff compensation to administer the program? The answer is yes, and it's limited to 15%. Again, a question about whether if received Ramadan assistance or funding for Ramadan projects already, can they apply? The answer is no, you are not eligible to apply for this grant.
Okay. Question, can we provide cash assistance to undocumented immigrants and international students who do not have funds to pay for utilities or rent rearrange? So that's something that would go under our financial assistance category.
There's a question about whether or not the funds could be utilized to support a community center, a mosque, whether that could be used to rehabilitate a facility or to help pay the operational costs like rent and things like that. And unfortunately, no, the grant can only be utilized in one of the 4 categories mentioned. Again, that is food security, domestic violence, healthcare PPE distribution, and financial assistance to individuals.
Okay, another question, can the funding be paid directly to the client or does it need to go to the vendor, i.e. the landlord? So this funding is going to go directly to the organization, and then the organization will be required upon reporting to prove how that funding was distributed. So if you're going to pay rent on behalf of a client, that's something that we would need proof of. I hope that answers that question.
There was a question earlier also about whether or not an organization could partner with, say, a mosque or another organization to apply. And the answer is yes. However, you must determine which 501c3 you guys will be applying under. So only one IRS tax number will be utilized, but you certainly can partner and work together as a community to respond.
Okay, would counseling staff hours for domestic violence fall in administrative costs? Thank you. Yes. So if I read that correctly, would you be paying for the salary of those staff members? If so, then yes, that would go under administrative costs.
There's a question with regards to how will grant recipients be determined? Are they first come, first serve, or all applications reviewed before the deadline be considered equally? As long as all applicants, or as long as you get your application in by the submission deadline, then our team will review that. So all applicants will be reviewed, all applications will be reviewed, and then we make our determination based on that, on what we review and what we find valuable and relevant in the application.
We have received masks from IRUSA, so do we not qualify then for this phase? No, you do qualify. That's an in-kind donation and not a grant, so please feel free to apply.
Yeah, so if you've received hygiene kits, masks, or rice from IRUSA, physical rice, not money to purchase rice, then yes, you are eligible, you do qualify to apply for this.
Another question, we have been buying, oops, sorry, they're coming in. We have been buying gift cards for a grocery store in our area. Would this work? Yes, that would go under food security. Okay, a couple of questions on financial assistance. So this is pretty a broad category. We do understand that. So again, rent, utilities for clients. What other ones shall we?
We also discussed transportation as well. So if a client needs to maintain their transportation to get to and from work, for example, you can utilize the financial assistance for that. I believe those were the three that we had discussed. But if you have any specific questions in regards to financial assistance, if there's something that we may not have elaborated on, please feel free to email us directly at usprograms@irusa.org with your specific question, and we'll try to answer that for you.
Okay, to clarify, for financial assistance for domestic violence victims, clients would need to provide receipts for the things they use the money to buy. So no, we only require for the organization itself to report that to us, but we're not going to be requiring any clients receipts or anything about what they bought. So we're just, if you give a client, for instance, I don't know, $200 as a financial assistance, then that's something that you would need to report to us too. But the client itself doesn't need to report to us about how they spent that money specifically. Like, we wouldn't collect receipts from them.
There's a question from Brother Muhammad Sarwari, and I apologize if I butchered that name, but says our center has the state and federal valid number, but no certification. Wondering if those ID work. Please email us, again, usprograms@irusa.org. We know that from state to state, there are different requirements in terms of, whether your center needs to have a certificate of good standing, or, again, different states have different rules. So please email us directly so that we can take a look at that and see what requirements are needed for your organization and for your particular state.
If you receive financial assistance to purchase a freezer, can we get masks or hygiene kits? So if you would purchase a freezer specifically, that would go, I guess if the freezer is for your organization, then yes, all those three items would go under financial assistance. Do you offer the in-kind grant like PPE? No. But if you'd like to receive PPE, if you'd like to purchase PPE, then you would apply for the healthcare /PPE grant. Is there any deadline to spend the grant monies? Yes, again, so the timeline will be between June 15th and September 15th. So a 3-month period to implement all of the money. Would you accept online application, or should it be mailed? No, all of the applications have to go through our grant management system, Submittable. So again, you could access that on our website, irusa.org/grants. and there you'll be able to make a free account and proceed with the form.
There's a question about, will this disqualify us from applying for general funds application next year? I would say no. Again, the COVID funding is specifically for the COVID response, so that should not affect your future application for any other type of grant support, grant application with Islamic relief for next year. All right.
If you didn't, sorry, this is a good one. If you didn't receive funding in the first round, should we assume we didn't qualify? No, please don't assume that. Phase 1 and phase 2 are different categories. Phase 1 was pre-selected. This is an open call. So yes, please do apply unless you don't meet those two criteria. Okay, cool. Again, if we didn't answer any of your questions, please email us at usgrants@irusa.org, and we'll be able to get back to you there.
Also, again, keep an eye out for the email that will be following today's webinar. In that email will be the link for the application. We'll also include a recording of this webinar if you need to go back and rewatch to double check anything. And lastly, there'll be the email again to send directly to us any additional questions that we didn't answer. And again, usgrants@irusa.org, but that will be included in the email. And with that, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today on our phase 2 COVID response webinar. Again, if we did not get an opportunity to answer your question, or if something comes up after we get off this call today, please do email us. Again, it's usgrants@irusa.org. Do be on the lookout for the email that will be following with the submission link and all the supporting documents. And lastly, please do keep in mind that the application will only be open for a week. The application will close next Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please do bear in mind that it is Eastern Standard Time. It is not specific to your time zone. So please keep that in mind. If you're on the West Coast, please bear in mind 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. Once the application closes, we will not be able to reopen it. And again, if you have any additional questions, please do email us. We thank you all for everything that you do in your local communities. And we thank you for joining us today. And we hope that each one of you stays safe. And we look forward to seeing your submissions soon. Thank you so much.